Hello, and welcome to the video submission for my game, Legacy Trial of Labus. This video is a part of my final year project where I focus on level design and the narrative that supports it. Trial of Labus is a third-person adventure game where the player assumes the role of Michael Beckman, a young man searching for his missing father, John Beckman, who disappeared years before. On his 18th birthday, Michael receives his father's journal, filled with secrets and information about a legendary pirate, Olivier Levasseur. Now he must retrace his father's steps to uncover the truth and the reason behind his disappearance. Now, the section that I'm showing would take place shortly after the start of the game. By this point, the player would already know the basic controls, but for playtesting purposes, I've tried setting this up and structuring this part of the level like a tutorial. The player comes on a cove. This is where the map has led him, around just rocky cliffs. However, light out rocks, maybe they have algae on them, guide the player down. When they look down, we see light shimmering from within.
Holy shit, that's a ship. Guess you weren't as crazy as I thought, Dad.
We begin as Michael. When you emerge from the water, we immediately spot a large pirate ship illuminated by sunlight. This is done purposefully to draw the player's attention. Also beyond the ship, another beam of light highlights a lone green tree, encouraging the player to explore, but also keeping the player's eyes up. The green allows the player to get an extra bit of contrast from the background, as everything else is quite grayscale in this level. This will keep the player looking up. Also, throughout the level, Michael will talk to himself, much like Nathan Drake does in Uncharted. This approach allows me to naturally deliver historical context as well as general knowledge without relying on an exposition, making sure that players stay informed without breaking the immersion. Now, there are multiple paths, but we can go explore around. For now, I'm going to take the obvious one. When the player enters the ship, he will be told the interaction prompt, which is E. He'll also be shown an object that is scattered throughout the level that may help him in the future. Climbing up, the player's attention is immediately drawn towards a light source above. This encourages vertical exploration. The player knows he must be there. Orange, around the orange are all the climbable ledges. However, after this small section, climbable ledges are still very much apparent, but they're just a brighter color, trying to keep that naturalistic look of the environment as well. Now, the player can choose to go up vertically and just carry on. However, for those who like to explore, I encourage the exploration. So if the player takes the side paths where you can see the climbing holds and climbs up, there's a chest. Now, places like this will be scattered throughout the map, and they might leave you stuff like gold coins. Now, for playtesting purposes only, I created a checkpoint system as my level got very big and players couldn't go back, so it was something I needed. I will show it once. For the purpose of this video, I will die once. However, after that, any deaths I will just cut and skip to and re-go over, as my level is large and I've got to fit it into quite a tight time frame. If the player had chosen to explore earlier, they would have found the ladders at the back. Now, the player can choose to go into the captain's deck, which if they do, they will find a note. On the note, a skull.
Olivier's sigil. So he really
Captain
was here.
Olivier, the pirate, used many Jolly Rogers for his career as a pirate, as a bucketeer/pirate. However, I'm going to use one for the purpose of the level, which is the Black Skull. Now, if the player comes up and he misses it, and he doesn't explore the captain's deck, the ship itself will have holes in, so he has one last chance to look at this before moving on. The player climbs the masts, and I'm slowly introducing new mechanics within to the player with poles you can swing from. So the player swings from mast to mast, as well as getting the player that used to inhabit that they can go around things, not just hop from one place to another. Still, I gradually introduce a few more mechanics. Now, the player needs to go over. He can see the climb holds, but there is no way he's making that jump. So, there's a slight root coming out from the ceiling. The player uses his grapple and Tarzans his way to the climbing holds. When we enter here, we can see the
Whoa.
path ahead.
This wasn't just
Brightly
a
lit up,
hideout.
we see
Looks
the
like they
exit
were
of this
offloading
cave.
something.
The
Maybe
left-hand
treasure,
side, brightly lit
support
up with a beam of
beams,
light pointing towards the
platforms.
beams.
They built
To the
all
right,
this
we
for
can
a
see
reason. A
see
whole
other
damn
structures,
operation
platforms,
hidden in a
whilst
cave.
the main climb
Whatever
and
they were
everything we're
doing
going to
here
do is all
didn't
kept
matter.
hidden from the player for now.
Let's find a way across.
Now, the player knows he can go, and if you're someone who likes to look around, the player has the option to look and now map out his route, saying that this section previously hidden, he can now see it all. He can see where he might be able to climb to and what he might have to do. This allows the player to think more about where they're going to climb, rather than just going from one ledge to another. Slowly, again, introducing a new mechanic, like the wall, like skimming along the cliff's edge, or the wall's edge. Like how we went around the masts, we're going around other objects also. The player reaches the other side, there's a chance to look back, kind of see where you came from, give that sense of progression. Seeing where you come from is always quite important, because you don't want the player to think like what they're doing isn't worthwhile. Now, this will also be the first point where the player will see the island from such a high vantage point.
That peak.
The idea
It
is
looks just
Michael
like
wears
the
a pendant,
Dad
like a
gave
family
me.
heirloom.
That's gotta be it.
Shift and the
That's where
mountain
I'll
range
find
visible
it.
ahead suddenly
know
link
it.
into the environmental story. The rock ahead, the peak looking slightly like a buzzard, which translates to in French as le bœuf, as le bus.
All this time, he knew about this place. That mountain peak. Same as the pendant. He knew
While
I'd come
scaling
for
the
him.
cliff, you can get a better
He was
view of the
pointing me here
forest,
from the
of the
start.
jungle, sorry, and we can kind of start to see an opening in the trees, but you don't know what's there, you can't really see much. That's done purposefully. I'm not wanting the player to know what's there, I just want them to be curious about it. Now, that patch of clearance slowly opens up now. We can now see it for what it is.
This place is beautiful.
Riker's men.
Fuck. How'd they
I
get here so
purposefully
fast?
show the
Riker's
player the
men.
enemies now,
Guess
as
I
well
couldn't
as
stay out of
the
trouble
level
for
they're
long.
going up into.
One of them's right below
This
me.
allows the player
Let's see if
to
I
get
can sneak
some
up on
form
him.
of like a mental map. a glimpse of the jungle clearing spot on the head. It builds up tension and allows the player to plan their approach. Scaling the mountain as well, I want the player to feel some form of sense of unease, as the player at this point isn't possessing any weapons, just his grapple hook and a torch. The player is a young man who doesn't have military training. He was brought up in a quiet. He always was in fights, but he's never really been one to kill. Orange pathway makes it seem like this is the way ahead. However, the pillar will break, forcing you down. Now, the player cannot return backwards.
Is he seriously hissing? Maybe this is my chance.
The idea here is the enemy is relieving himself, giving the player enough time to potentially choke him out. This is where the player will acquire his gun. For the level and my own personal playstyle only, I will be taking stealth. All combat within this has been designed with stealth in mind, as is my preferred playstyle. Now, people that want to run and gun is entirely optional. However, for the purpose of this, I want to show off my enemy design and my patrol route design, so I wish to just stealth. Taking the left path is a slightly more sneakier path to the enemy in front. Of course, the player wouldn't know that right now, so they might just be walking around, but they know there's enemies close. Taking the other route would allow you to use a mechanic, but you would have to shoot him. Shooting him may have alerted the other enemy, as bullets are loud. Here we can get a glimpse of the enemy in front. But the place we have to go, if we go too far, our body will be sticking out. So it gives that whole concept of how stealth is always a waiting game. It's always about waiting for the opportunities. Every enemy is designed within this to have points where they're exposed, vulnerable points. So the player with the enemy in front is naturally tunnel visioned, as most players are when they see enemies, and that's kind of done purposefully. So I want the player to realize that they've missed something. They see a chest when they turn the corner. Now the player instinctively will try and find the route to it. But the player knows that he's missed this. He didn't see it when he walked past because he wasn't looking around. I want that it still be that sense of I need to be looking around and conscious of it. Because for me, I'm always looking when I play games like Uncharted or Tomb Raider, I'm always looking for where can I be? What treasures are hiding somewhere? So it's something I did want to incorporate, whether it be a slight corner on our next to a cliff, which just holds a little trinket or a piece of treasure, something where I can keep my eye on I have to keep my eye on the environment, and gives that sense of it's worth my time being curious. If you keep rewarding the player to be curious, he'll explore more. But if you just have points where the player isn't really being rewarded, they'll stop doing it. They won't explore, they won't pay attention. Now, if the player misses this and they fall in the water, they are able to just swim. However, if they don't climb back up to this point, you'll miss another chance to see this mountain. Now, throughout the level, there'll be multiple points where, in glimpses through trees and other sections of the map, where we can see it from different angles and that we're closer, giving that sense of like, you know where you started, and this is where you are now. You know how to see how far you've actually come. So, as I said, the combat is designed around stealth. However, but players are free to engage however they wish. But this playthrough will demonstrate the stealth option. To the left, we have a stealth and climbing. The right, we have a waterfall. We're able to climb up the waterfall. And the middle is a bit of a riskier stealth option. However, if people remembered from the cutscene, we saw vans coming from the right-hand side. Whether they remember or not is not a big deal, but it might incline people to go to the right-hand side first. People who like to explore will see this area anyway, and will come here later. So we'll come here now. Here we can see the road that it came through, but it looks too muddy for us to go up. When we kill him, we find a note he was writing, an equipment list, and at the bottom it labels silent pistol. Now, this isn't something that is necessarily detrimental to the player, because they could have found this either way. However, finding that piece of paper that allows the player to know they have a silenced pistol aboard one of the trucks makes the player look for it, where otherwise they probably wouldn't be looking for it. They might look around, but they know it's there now. Stealth can always take a lot longer in these games, so from henceforth I will speed up the stealth. Now that I so elegantly killed everyone, the player gets that chance to look around freely. From that, the player can see where they came from, how far away their starting point was. Looking at the same vantage point we were just not a minute ago. Now, the player can choose to explore, and when they do, they might come across this. Within it, a silenced pistol. Advancing through the jungle, the player encounters a door shaped like a lion's maw, the entrance to the first trial, the trial of the Nemean lion. The puzzle in this trial, these trials, and the level itself are all proof of concept versions.
Holy shit.
Designed to demonstrate the ideas within the limited project time, as I wanted to focus heavily more on the level design itself. So the design of this room, we have torches lighting up this main entrance. This inclines the players to go forward, but you also have this section of like a different contrast where we've got the red and the ambient blue from the water and the light coming from above. We see a crack in the ceiling and a light beam pointing down. Now, for this intensive purposes, we will go forward, but it wouldn't make a difference either way. The player becomes the door. The door is too heavy for the player to lift, so the player must find another way. Pulling these levers makes the pillar fall down. Falling down, the pillar pulls the chain and lifts the door up ever so slightly. The player, when he pulls the second lever, the chains snap. The player will then need to find something to tie it together. This is where the player is now forced to go that separate route. He's now inclined to.
A treasure hunter, like my
We
dad.
see a lone treasure
If I
hunter
don't be careful, this
who's
could be
met
me
his
down
end.
here.
Here, I would like a cinematic which forces the player to take the backpack. Without the backpack, the player wouldn't be able to hold the rope, as he would have too much equipment. Now, if the player didn't know what he needed, in the note, it's a heartfelt letter to Simon's loved one. However, in the first few lines, the rope snapped on the way down. From that, the player can take a look around, and we'll see the grapple up there and a rope. Below, we see the remaining of the rope. Picking up the rope would trigger a fight. The player would then need to fight a jaguar-like monster, or big cat, similar to how in Tomb Raider we're fighting raptors. I like the idea of this being a lion trial, and you having a battle with a big cat. Now, the player goes, and the lever comes down, pushing the door up and the chains up enough that the player can lift it. Here, torches light and create beams of light.
Whoa. Constellations, the Crab, Hydra, and Hercules. There seems to be one missing.
So here and around us, we see constellations. The idea of that the ceiling of this room looks like a galaxy, stars and constellations alike. We've got the Hydra on the left, the Crab on the right, and the Hercules in front. And we said there's one missing. Now, these are all constellations that connect to Hercules, as well as things around us that show the zodiac Leo, or the sign of Leo. The player would turn the totems and move the beams of light to match up with the stars that relate to the constellation of the lion. Here, the player has the option to study the murals. We can go over and inspect.
Hercules
It'll
and the
tell you a
lion.
little bit about
It was
what's
said
happening.
that the lion's hide was impervious to weapons. Weapons were known to shatter on the lion's hide. Not even Hercules' great club could harm it. Hercules knew he needed to defeat the lion, but weapons were useless. He chose to wrestle with the beast instead. For hours they fought until Hercules suffocated the lion with his brute strength. Once Hercules killed the lion, he knew he was tasked with returning its hide, but no weapons could pierce it. He ripped off one of the lion's claws and used it to skin the beast, wearing its hide as impenetrable armor.
After inspecting them all, we get the greatest clue. We walk forward and we can
Looks
see
like a
this
keyhole.
looks like a keyhole, but we need the key,
Bingo.
which
Let's
happens
see
to
if
be
that
the
fits
lion's claw.
keyhole. What's
In
this?
it, we
Looks like
find
a lion's claw. Some sort of
tributes and
artifact.
trophies, a lion's
Better
claw,
take it with me.
and an
Looks like
artifact.
there's a stone tablet here too. Looks like there's more to
When the
this.
player does
Guess
this,
I'll take this too.
buttons rise and water begins to fill up the environment.
These look like buttons. Better figure out
The player
what they
then needs
mean
to
before
press
I
them
drown
in the
here.
correct order, the order of which Hercules defeated the lion. From the struggle to the wrestle to the skinning of the lion. When this happens, the floor beneath opens up suddenly. The water pressure would shoot the player out of the waterfall, forcing him to land within a pond. Here we come across
Looks like
some
lift.
sort of
To
old
think
lift.
they had the time to build all this.
The player can come through and notice that there's no way to go up. Now, the player will notice this straight away, that this is something you can climb up naturally, but yet there's something you can drag. Now, if the player goes up, they'll find that their path is now stopped. The ledge is too high, so they'll need to make their way back down. Put this on the lever, put this on the elevator, and pull the lever at the top. It also gives you a little bit of chance to get a higher point of view and look back at what just spat you out. A lion's more. An angry one. Here we can push this through and we see some barbed. We see some planks. We can look through them. Now this can kind of indicate to the player that the stuff behind there, which if he would go, would be a coin for him to pick up. Here we see a short cutscene.
Spread out! Riker wants the Beckham kid alive.
I'm showing you that there's enemies. I'm showing you so the player can mentally pick up the map. We can also see the chopper that goes off into the distance. We know that they're coming for you now. It's not just that you've run into them, they're looking for you. Now, the player can explore this little rundown building. They can find some loot on the bottom floor. Climbing up, doing this will allow the player to take an alternative route. However, I'm not going to go that way. It seems that I wasn't very good at stealthing, even with this silenced pistol. But I designed this little battle arena to be quite like a jungle gym. I wanted there to be so many options for the player to, so many places to go up and down and just to run through if they wanted to climb up. We can hide on the top, come down. There's places we can swing across if you wanted to be all speedy and cool. I was not speedy and cool. I was slow and cool. But it was like something. I wanted everything to kind of be connected, you know? Like, if we climb up here, we've got this entire path to come through. If we can even go down, and even from here, we can go up and all the way around. Here we see one last enemy.
What was that? An explosion?
We now hear explosions in the distance with it, where the chopper went to. And I introduced a new mechanic as well. Something that the player hasn't really done or seen. I also did this purposefully. This cliff kind of blocks your view and you've got to go around the corner. So I can have one of those grand reveals where you've came around this corner and you see this structure, as well as the last and the third and final chance to see the mountain from the start of the game, and this time from its side. Where at first we saw the front beak, now we're seeing the side. The cliff was blocking it the entire way, but now we've got a reveal. We get both. We get this building and the mountain. Here, before we go in, we can kind of scout our route. We can see a large beam as well as an opening there, but you don't know what it is yet. Again, we can see where we're going. We can see it, but it's just blocked. We can see that there's something over there. Another doorway, but it's blocked. So we need to find a way up. Okay, jump. I wasn't sure why I wasn't jumping there. Now, when we climb on the outside, I give the player the route. You can see that, he wants to go over, but it's too far. He cannot make that jump. So he needs to find another way up, which links us to the door we saw as we got here. From here, if we choose to look down, we can see the remnants of where that guy's blown in. We can see the explosion shots and a one last final big view of this mountain. The place that it seems that we think we're trying to get to.
There's that chopper. Can I just catch a break?
Here we get a glimpse of the chopper we saw. So now we've linked it. We know where it went. We can see subtle lights coming from this as well. I want that feeling of it's dark. We can see it's dark, but there's a subtle light. Gives that sense that maybe you're not alone getting into this. But I want it to be eerie. Remember, pirates are never like this is meant to be a cave.
Looks like some catacombs. I know pirates weren't exactly model citizens, but there must be hundreds.
This was a player like Razors. He's not alone here. Swiftly takes out the enemy opposition. Now we can see ahead. With the torch off, we can notice that we can kind of see what's ahead. But on our left, the doorway is slightly open, like they're slightly lit. But it's too dark to really see what's going on inside. So I want the player to go investigate. I want him to be. I wanted the feeling of. I want the character to be scared. Like what's happened here. I want an eerie feeling
What the
to
fuck?
this level.
These don't look like they were just killed, tortured even. Look at his clothes. He was a naval officer and a high-ranking one. Maybe it wasn't just pirates who were involved with Olivier.
This is to put up that narrative and the plot holes and plot twists within the story. That maybe Olivier wasn't the only bad guy. Maybe there was some parts of the government too. Now, we can see a little light coming from the right side, and it looks like a way to go. On the left, seems like a normal torch, but It draws you. That light draws you. And when we get over it, we see something that looks like a crawl space. If we had our torches on, we can see it more clearly too. Crawling through, we can find a dead body and a note.
This note is in French. Dad speaks French. I'll take it in case I find him.
See, we find a note that's in French. The player's like, oh, my dad speaks French. I can take that if I find him. Gives that little bit of foreshadowing that maybe you are going to find him. Maybe sooner than you think. Maybe he's like, maybe it's closer than what you're believing it is. And we come out to another rocky like cove. We see the door ahead, but nowhere to get there. We see the remnants of what used to be an old bridge and one single platform, but it's unstable. When the player drops to go across, it drops too much and the player cannot make the jump. The player can make it across. The door opens slightly. I wonder for a player to kind of feel a bit underwhelmed here. You know, you've came this far and you've opened what seems like the door, but it doesn't excite you as much as it should yet. Descending further, we get what the player wants. Another grand reveal. We see what looks like to be a big arena. In the middle, we see a pedestal, and on it looks like we could fit the claw we got from the previous trial. When we insert it, 9 hydras appear.
9 heads, 9 lives. Hercules burned each one to stop them from coming back. Maybe I need to do the same.
9 basins will be around the map for your light. Each one will light its own hydra. The player needs to light all 9. When we get to the top, we can see the 3 other basins and what looks to be a door. However, we can't see a way there yet. Lighting the 6th basin shoots the catapult, with it creating a zipline-like wire that the player can take. However not visible, the wire is there, but I couldn't do anything about it not being visible. But I promise it's there. Told you, it was there. I promised. We get here, we can light the remaining 3. Lighting the last one, the middle hydra falls, and the door seems to open. The hydra falls, making like a set of stairs. for you to climb on a previously unclimbable wall. And it's too dark, so we turn on our torch. The room's empty. Looks like someone's already been here.
Looks like someone has been here before me. Looks whoever was here left a note. Hey kid, come find me. I'll explain everything. You deserve that much. Head east. I'll light a fire at first light. JB. JB. Dad? You're alive?
And that is the end. Only a note. That's all I had time for the time given with my project. A bit of a cliffhanger with the narrative side of story, but thank you for everyone that's watching. And any final notes. I designed the level as a whole to be quite heavy on the traversal as well as the combat, as I wanted to. It was really inspired by Uncharted and Tomb Raider, and I really hope that's what it portrayed. From the whole learning about Olivia Levasseur and the Hercules trials from theories, I hope that the blueprints I made with notes and just the widgets telling you things was a great help towards the level's narrative, which is something I'm always quite interested in, as well as still blogging out. When doing a blog out, still betraying the environmental storytelling I'm trying to portray with the blog out, with what the level would be like itself. But again, I will end you on the cliffhanger. Does Michael find his dad? Does he can't? Does he light the fire? Does Riker intercept them? With that, this is adjourned, and thank you and goodbye.